Hi! In this video, I'll talk about our work on facilitating the communication of politeness through fine-grained paraphrasing. As exemplified by this virtual conference we're having now, people are increasingly able to overcome geographic and cultural barriers to converse with people from different backgrounds in diverse settings. Usually, with the hope that through these conversations, the participants can reach a state of mutual understanding. However, it is not uncommon to observe cases when people unfortunately fail to understand each other's intentions, leading to unsatisfactory conversational outcomes. One natural question we may want to ask is, what exactly can go wrong in such processes? In general, drawing inspirations from Berlow's sender, message, channel, receiver model of communication, there are at least two sources of error as illustrated by the following visual example. First, the communication channel may not always faithfully transmit the message. For instance, emojis can render differently on different phones. What the receiver sees can thus be different from what the sender sends. Second, even when the message is faithfully delivered, the receiver may still have a different interpretation of the message compared to the sender, and what's intended as an emoji for extreme happiness may be interpreted as only showing moderate satisfaction. Either of these problems can lead to a misalignment between sender's intention and the receiver's perception. This may be seen as a missed opportunity, especially in technology-mediated settings, when system assistance is potentially possible. Which leads to the following question: what options do we have to help prevent it? As a case study to explore possible system assistance, in this work, we focus on one particular pragmatic aspect in language use, namely politeness, because it is important in many social interactions, and it is also subject to the same challenges we just described. For instance, linguistic markers expressing politeness, such as the deliberate choice of using could you instead of can you, may be lost in machine-translated communication, and may thus lead to the misalignment between the sender's intended politeness and the receiver's perception. As a possible mitigation strategy, our goal is to generate intention-preserving paraphrases that are more likely to deliver the intended level of politeness after transmission in the eyes of the receiver, given the original message and the communication setting. When compared to standard-style transfer tasks, our task gives rise to two new challenges. First, in order to minimize the gap in perceptions, we need to have fine-grained control over the degree of politeness expressed, and thus, the more commonly used binarized style distinction would be too coarse for our purpose. Additionally, since the desired degree of change is only determined at runtime, depending on the speaker's intended level of politeness, as well as the communication setting, namely the information about the channel and the receiver, we need to be able to adjust the style in an ad hoc fashion. Given these new challenges, we need a new solution for this task. We start from the intuition that the same level of politeness can be conveyed through different combinations of politeness strategies, with some being more appropriate to the given communication setting than others. As an analogy, we think of politeness strategies as stylistic Lego bricks. Suppose we have a structure to build in mind, but unfortunately, some pieces are not available. This does not mean that we can no longer build a structure, as we can try to find alternative bricks. For instance, as a first attempt, we might just look for the most similar piece out of all available bricks, and use it as a substitute. This may not always yield a satisfactory result due to the difference in the brick shape. However, if we try harder, it may be possible to find an alternative set of bricks, which, when stacked together, can achieve the desired function and allow us to more precisely recreate the structure we had in mind. This process of Lego building mirrors what we do to generate intention-preserving paraphrases. At a high level, we consider a classic two-step approach, separating planning, that is, choosing a viable combination of strategies that can achieve a desired politeness level, from the step of realization, during which we assemble the strategy plan with the rest of the message into a valid paraphrase, borrowing techniques from the delete, retrieve, generate paradigm. More specifically, in order to search for an appropriate strategy plan in the space of possible solutions in a flexible and efficient manner, we translate the problem into an integer linear programming formulation, with the objective to minimize the intended politeness level to that perceived by the receiver. Notably, by considering different sender and receiver perception models, we are accounting for the difference in individual perceptions. The ILP formulation also makes it easy to encode constraints from the communication setting. In particular, we can explicitly specify strategies that are safe to transmit and only consider safe strategies in the strategy plan, thus addressing the problem of systematically faulty channels. As a concrete example, for this input message, we first find the politeness strategies used, which we highlighted in pink, and set up the ILP problem taking into account the sender, channel, and receiver information to arrive at a solution that replaces two strategies used with new ones. We then remove strategies that do not appear in the ILP solution by deleting the corresponding markers from the text. We then train a generation model to integrate the planned strategies into the post-deletion context, and insert the new strategies sequentially to produce the eventual paraphrase. We tested our approach in two simulated settings. First, we used the case of machine translation-mediated communication to simulate the case when the channel may not faithfully transmit the message. Using a simple trick of back translation, we identified types of strategies that are considered to be at risk of being lost in English to Chinese translation. Second, we consider prolific annotators from the Stanford politeness corpus as potential senders and receivers. By using individualized perception models, we simulate the case of communication between individuals with different perceptions, potentially due to different cultural backgrounds. To measure the degree of misalignment, we consider the difference between the estimated sender's politeness perception of the original input and the estimated receiver perception for the message we expect them to receive. With a test set of messages, we can then compute the mean absolute error as an indication for the degree of misalignment. As a reference point, we first consider the case when no intervention is in place. In the case of machine-translated communication, we use the back-translated text as an imperfect proxy for what the receiver sees to compute the default level of misalignment. We then explore whether intention-preserving paraphrases can help reduce the degree of misalignment, and compare the effectiveness of paraphrases generated with different degrees and quality of planning. We first consider the retrieve component of DRG as an approach for binary level planning, and show that such coarse planning could in some cases make the situation even worse. With fine-grained planning, we are able to significantly reduce the amount of misalignment. And in particular, in both our experimental settings, the ILP-guided paraphrase, which incorporates the best quality strategy plan, produces the greatest reduction in misalignment, significantly outperforming the baseline approaches. These results, together with some additional experiments presented in the paper, suggest that the effectiveness of the eventual paraphrase is largely determined by the quality of the strategy plan. We also verify that the contents of the message are mostly preserved in the paraphrases, and the outputs are generally judged as mostly natural by human annotators. In conclusion, in this work, we articulate systematic challenges in the communication process. Using politeness as a case study, we demonstrate the potential of intention-preserving paraphrases as a possible mitigation strategy, and introduce a methodology for generating fine-grained politeness paraphrases. However, it is only an early exploration, and more work needs to be done. For instance, we are working with a subset of politeness strategies, and our experiments are in simulated settings. Moving forward, we need both communication-based evaluations to test the effectiveness of such paraphrases in realistic settings, and considerations to avoid introducing additional complexities to the end users. Additionally, in this work, we have only explored the communication of politeness, which is only one aspect in language use that may lead to misunderstandings. As we are increasingly able to communicate with people from different backgrounds, the risk of miscommunication also grows. I think there is need and potential for systems in the middle to act as bridges in helping people better communicate with each other. Thank you for listening. I'm looking forward to meeting you at the conference and chatting more about this work.